"Mom, I need the apartment for a party tonight. You'll sleep at the station," declared the son, who had been living off his mother for 4 years. "All right, sweetheart," she agreed. But when his guests saw her surprise, the party ended instantly. In an old neighborhood of the city, there is an abandoned house that locals avoid after dark. The two-story building, with its peeling paint and boarded-up windows, stands at the end of San Martin Street as a reminder of better times. Once, a large family lived there. Children's laughter would echo through the yard, and the smell of frying arepas would draw neighbors over for evening gatherings. But that was long ago. Very long ago. Now the house is dead. The electricity and water were cut off long ago. The city authorities plan to demolish the building but keep postponing it, as if something is holding them back. Meanwhile, strange sounds are heard from the house at night. The lady living across the street was the first to notice. Around midnight, a quiet crying. At first, she thought it was cats, but the crying sounded too human. Too desperate. "I think someone's in there," she confided to her neighbor. "Don't be silly. The house has been empty for years." "But I hear it. Every night someone's moaning. As if praying." The rumors spread quickly through the neighborhood. Now, even children were afraid to walk past the house during the day, and adults would cross themselves and quicken their pace. The truth was simpler and more terrifying than any ghost story. Someone really was living there, a man who snuck into the house every night through a hole in the fence when the streets were deserted. A man who really did cry at night. Not from pain, from sorrow. From the guilt that had been gnawing at him for years. Sometimes he would pull out an old photograph from his pocket, a wife and a little son smiling at the camera. The photograph was worn, the edges yellowed, but he cherished it like a relic. It was all he had left of his former life. Gloria Martin woke at 4:30 a.m. from a familiar nightmare. In her dream, she was once again searching for Alberto, running through endless corridors, shouting his name, but he was always one step ahead, unreachable, like a mirage in the desert. Her sheet was soaked with sweat. Her heart pounded as if she had truly been running. Gloria sat up on the bed, hugging her knees, and tried to calm herself. So many years had passed, and still, the nightmares persisted. The wound still bled. Outside the window of her small apartment in the La Paz district, dawn was just beginning to break. The sky slowly shifted from black to deep blue, promising another scorching day. Far off, roosters crowed and dogs barked, the usual morning cacophony. Gloria got out of bed, her legs trembling with exhaustion. In the mirror, she saw a woman who looked older than her 43 years. Deep wrinkles around her eyes, gray strands in her chestnut hair, downturned corners of her mouth. Somewhere beneath that weariness hid the beauty that had once driven Alberto mad, but it was becoming harder to preserve it. She moved to the tiny kitchen, where everything smelled of despair. The refrigerator hummed like a wounded animal, the gas stove barely worked, and the faucet dripped constantly, like a metronome ticking away the hours of her life. Gloria turned on the radio at the lowest volume and began making breakfast. Coffee from the cheapest beans, pancakes from the last of the flour, a bit of cheese, all she could afford. Her hands moved automatically, their motions honed by years of repetition, while her thoughts, as always, returned to that day. To that morning almost 15 years ago, when she had woken up to find a note on the kitchen table. "Forgive me. I'm leaving. Don't look for me. Alberto." Just 7 words that changed her life forever. At first, she thought it was a joke. Alberto loved pranks. He could hide in the closet and jump out shouting, "Surprise!" But the hours passed, and he didn't show up. Days turned into weeks. "He probably met someone else," whispered Senora Rosa from the apartment across the hall. "Men do that sometimes." "But he loved Gloria so much," objected Senora Maria from downstairs. "And he adored their boy." "Love fades," Rosa said philosophically. "A beautiful young woman can turn any man's head." Gloria listened to these conversations and felt something inside her die. With each passing day, the idea of betrayal seemed more plausible. Alberto had indeed become strange in the past few months, nervous, distracted, sometimes disappearing for hours without explanation. When she asked where he'd been, he would answer evasively. Now she understood why. He had someone else. "Mom, what's for breakfast?" The voice of Esteban pulled her out of her memories. Gloria turned and saw her son standing in the doorway. 22 years old, but still looking like a teenager, slim, with unruly dark hair and his father's eyes. From Alberto, he had inherited the same shape of lips, high cheekbones, and the habit of furrowing his brow when he was displeased, and Esteban was displeased almost all the time. "Pancakes, cheese, and coffee," Gloria replied, setting the plate on the table. Esteban sat down and started eating in silence. The scar on his forehead, a legacy of the accident 5 years ago, was pale against his tanned skin. Gloria looked at that scar and remembered the terrible days in the hospital when the doctors had given her no guarantees. "You going to work?" Esteban asked without looking up. "Yes, as usual. I'll be home late." "Got it," he mumbled into his plate. "I don't like it when you come back late." "But you do like spending the money I earn," Gloria said wearily. Esteban snapped his head up. Anger flared in his eyes, the same fire Gloria had often seen in Alberto's eyes when he was furious. "Don't start with me in the morning. It's not my fault. If you had been a normal wife, maybe Dad wouldn't have left you for someone else." Those words were always like a knife to the heart. Gloria pressed her lips together to keep from screaming. How cruel it was. But she was too crushed by life to answer back. "I need money," Esteban said, finishing his pancakes. "For what?" "I want to meet up with some friends, maybe go to the movies." "What, am I supposed to sit at home like a monk?" Gloria opened her old wallet and looked inside. A few crumpled bills and a handful of coins, all she had until her next paycheck. "Esteban, there's almost no money. Maybe you could find a job? At least something part-time?" Her son's face darkened. "Here we go again about the job. I already told you, I can't. After the accident, I have concentration issues," the doctor said. "The doctor said you fully recovered," Gloria interrupted quietly. "That was 5 years ago." Esteban jumped up, his chair crashing to the floor with a bang. "So now you think I'm faking it? That it's my fault I almost died? Maybe it would have been better if I hadn't survived, huh? Then you wouldn't have to carry such a heavy burden." "Don't say that," Gloria cried, her voice trembling. "You know I." "You what?" "Took a vow to dedicate your life to me if I survived." Esteban finished bitterly. "You never stop reminding me. And yet our life is crap anyway." He grabbed his jacket from the rack and headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" "To Carlos's place. At least then no one lectures me first thing in the morning." "Will you come home for lunch?" "I'll cook." "I'll eat there," Esteban threw over his shoulder. The door slammed so hard the window panes rattled. Gloria was left alone with her cooling coffee and the familiar ache in her chest. She sank into a chair and began to cry. Quietly, soundlessly, the way women cry when they're too tired of life but can't afford to give up. Tears dripped onto the tablecloth, forming small salty puddles. The Herrera family's house in the prestigious El Prado neighborhood looked like a palace out of a fairy tale. White columns, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a swimming pool surrounded by palm trees, everything here breathed wealth and success. Gloria had been working there for 4 years and still hadn't gotten used to the luxury. Every time she stepped into the house, she felt like an outsider from another world, a world where people worried about having enough money for bread, where electricity was shut off for unpaid bills, where dreams crashed against the harsh walls of reality. "Good morning, Gloria," greeted Señora Patricia Herrera, an elegant woman in her 50s with impeccable hair and expensive makeup. "Good morning, Señora. How are things at home? How's your son?" Patricia always asked about her life, delicately, without prying. She was one of those rare wealthy people who hadn't forgotten what it meant to be human. Everything's fine, Gloria lied. Forgive me, Gloria, but you look tired. And thinner. Is everything all right? Gloria almost burst into tears at that simple show of concern. When was the last time someone had cared about how she was feeling? Some financial difficulties, she admitted. But we'll manage. Patricia nodded with understanding. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask. For now, take some fruit and meat from the kitchen, we have plenty, and it would be a shame to waste it. Such gestures of kindness warmed her soul, but at the same time, they emphasized the gulf between their two worlds. Here, they threw away food that could feed her family for a week. Here, they bought dresses that cost as much as her monthly salary. Here lived people who had never had to choose between medicine and food. Gloria got to work, vacuuming silk Persian carpets, dusting antique furniture, scrubbing the floors of a bathroom bigger than her kitchen and bedroom combined. The work was hard, but not just physically, emotionally it was even harder. Every object in this house was worth more than she earned in a year. Gloria, do you have a minute? Patricia called to her. Gloria put down the cloth and walked over to her employer. I wanted to talk to you about your son, Patricia said, settling into an armchair. Forgive my bluntness, but I think you're being too indulgent with him. Gloria felt her face flush with embarrassment. Senora, Please, hear me out. My nephew was in an accident too, when he was 17. He spent 2 months in a coma. The doctor said he might end up disabled. But he recovered, went to university, and now he's an engineer. He has a family, children. But Esteban is using his accident as an excuse, Patricia said gently but firmly. And you're enabling him. Out of love, I understand that. But that kind of love destroys rather than builds. Gloria remained silent, feeling her insides twist with pain. She knew Patricia was right. But she couldn't help herself. Every time she looked at the scar on her son's forehead, she remembered those terrible days in the hospital. The next 24 hours are critical, Senora Martin. We'll do everything we can, but prepare for the worst, the doctor's words still echoed in her mind. Gloria had prayed back then. She had knelt in the hospital chapel, in front of the crucifix, and sworn to all the saints, if her son survived, she would be the best mother in the world. She would give him everything she could. She would never deny him anything. Esteban survived. And she kept her promise, perhaps too well. You know what my husband said when he heard about our nephew? Patricia continued. He said, a catastrophe doesn't define a person. What defines them is how they respond to the catastrophe. But he's my only child, Gloria whispered. I almost lost him. And that's exactly why you have to help him become a man, not an overgrown child. Gloria, I'm 48, I have 3 children. Believe me, sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. After finishing her shift at the Herreras, Gloria went to her second job, a small office in the city center. Things were simpler here: wipe the desks, mop the floors, empty the trash cans. Less luxury, less pain from comparisons. The office was full of young people, programmers, designers, managers. They were about Esteban's age, but so different. These young people were energetic, driven, full of plans for the future. They stayed late working on projects, discussing ideas. And her son lay at home all day, watching videos and complaining about life. Senora Gloria, how are you? Juan, one of the programmers, greeted her. I'm fine, thank you. And how's your son? You mentioned he was looking for a job. Gloria stayed silent for a moment. What could she say? That Esteban wasn't even trying to change anything? That he thought the world owed him help? He's still looking, she lied. Well, if anything, we're hiring couriers. The pay's not great, but it's fine to start with. No experience needed. Thank you. I'll let him know. Gloria lied again. She knew she wouldn't say a word to her son. Esteban would find 1,000 reasons why the job wasn't good enough for him. On the way home, Gloria stopped by the bank. She needed to check on the loan she had taken 2 years ago, using the apartment as collateral. Back then, Esteban had urgently needed money. He said he wanted to start a small business selling mobile phones. Gloria believed him and took out the loan. Of course, the business never materialized, and the money disappeared without a trace. Senora Martin, the bank manager, spoke politely but coldly. Your situation is critical. You've missed payments for 4 months now. I know, but I'm going through some difficulties. Unfortunately, the bank has decided to sell your debt to a collection agency. The procedure has already started. What does that mean? It means your debt, along with the mortgage department, will be transferred to the new creditors. They have the right to demand full repayment or to initiate foreclosure on the property. Gloria felt the world spinning around her. You mean, they can take the apartment? Exactly. I advise you to contact the new creditors as soon as possible and try to negotiate a restructuring of the debt. Gloria left the bank on unsteady legs. The apartment. Their home, where she had lived with Alberto, where Esteban had been born, where all their memories were stored. The last thing she had left from her former life. And now they were going to take that too. The air outside was stifling despite the evening hour. The heavy, humid air pressed against her chest. Gloria sat down on a bench at the bus stop and allowed herself a few moments of weakness. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the sweat. She thought of Alberto. Was he somewhere now with another family? Something inside her protested against the thought. Alberto had always loved them. She had seen it in his eyes, felt it in every touch and every kiss. He adored little Esteban, playing with him for hours, reading him stories, teaching him how to ride a bike. Had it all been a lie? On her way home, Gloria decided to visit Senora Rosa, the neighbor from downstairs. The old woman was the only one who still remembered their family from before Alberto's disappearance. Maybe she could shed some light on what had really happened in those final days. Senora Rosa greeted her with her usual kindness. At 80 years old, she had kept her sharp mind and a remarkable memory for details. Gloria, my dear, come in. How are you? Senora, I need to ask you something, Gloria said, sitting down in an old armchair she remembered from childhood. About the days before Alberto disappeared. The old woman's face darkened. Why stir up the past, dear? So many years have gone by. Please. I need to know the truth. Senora Rosa studied Gloria's face for a long time. What exactly do you want to know? Do you really think he left for another woman? The old woman sighed heavily. Gloria, I knew your husband since he was a boy. His family lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. Alberto was a good boy, and later, a good man. He adored you, anyone could see that. Then why? Exactly, why? Senora Rosa cut her off. Men don't just disappear. Especially men like Alberto. Something made him do it. Maybe you hurt him? Neglected him? Nagged too much? Gloria felt her face flush with the sting of the accusation. Senora, I was a good wife. Were you? The old woman said skeptically, shaking her head. Alberto was a good man, a hard worker. He wouldn't have just left. There must have been a reason. And it was in you. Suddenly, a memory of that dreadful day came rushing back. Little Esteban, only 8 years old, had burst into the house in tears. His big, frightened eyes, trembling lips, he had clung to her skirt, sobbing. Mom, some men stopped me, they knew my name, they asked about Dad and you, they said we were all in danger. And what had she done? She had been busy, dinner needed cooking, cleaning had to be done, and the cutlets were burning. She had brushed him off. Oh, stop imagining things, she had said. It's probably nothing. She had given him a cookie and sent him off to play. But when Alberto came home from work and heard about it, he had turned as pale as a sheet. He held his son for a long time, gently asking him questions, what the men looked like, exactly what they had said, whether they had been following him. The boy had slowly calmed down in his father's arms, but Alberto didn't sleep that night. He paced the apartment, smoking cigarette after cigarette. Could it really be that she had been a bad mother? Could that other woman have been better than her? You know what, Senora Rosa, Gloria said, suddenly standing up, I'm not going to listen to your accusations. I've had enough. Gloria, dear, I only want the best for you. Goodbye. Gloria stormed out of the neighbor's apartment, slamming the door behind her. She stopped on the stairs, breathing heavily. The old woman's words burned like acid. What if she was right? What if Alberto had really left because she had failed as a wife and mother? At home, Gloria rushed to the wardrobe and pulled out an old cardboard shoebox. Inside was a neatly tied stack of white envelopes. Letters from Alberto, sent over the years. Letters she had never once opened. Esteban came home around midnight in high spirits. The day with Carlos had been great. They played soccer, drank beer, made plans. And the main plan was for tomorrow night. Mom, he called softly, noticing the kitchen light. Gloria was sitting at the table. In front of her were several sealed envelopes. Her face was red and swollen from crying. What now? Esteban asked harshly. Nothing, son. I'm just tired. Then why don't you go to bed? I can't sleep. Esteban looked at her, puzzled. But you said you were tired. Anyway, Mom, tomorrow night I'm having a party, he added in an offhand tone, like he was commenting on the weather. Friends are coming over, we're gonna have some fun. So, clear out of the apartment for the evening, will you? It'll do you good to get out for a while. Gloria couldn't believe her ears. What, clear out? Yeah, just be gone for 5 or 6 hours. We don't need you walking around like a ghost. Young people need to have fun without parental supervision. Esteban, this is my home, where would I go? It's my home too, he said indifferently. Come on, Mom, don't make this a big deal. Just one night. Go visit a friend, a neighbor, or hang out at the train station. Lots going on there, trains, people, life. Gloria looked at her son with pain and confusion. When had he become so cruel? When had he stopped caring about her feelings? Are you serious? You want your mother to spend the night at the train station? I don't care where you go. Just be gone when my friends get here. Gloria was stunned by the statement. Her son spoke to her as if she were a nuisance to be gotten rid of. There wasn't a trace of regret in his eyes, not a flicker of shame, only cold indifference. All right, she said quietly after a long pause. As you wish. Esteban nodded, satisfied. Great. So we're agreed. Clear out by 7 tomorrow. He headed to his room, tossing over his shoulder. Good night, Mom. Gloria remained alone in the kitchen, sitting motionless, unable to believe what had just happened. Her own son, the boy she had given her whole life to, nursed back to health after the accident, prayed for with all the saints, was throwing her out of her own home like some useless object. She didn't sleep a wink that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. The same thoughts spinning in her head. Where did I go wrong? Why did he turn out this way? Did I create this monster with my love? By morning, her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but there were no tears, only a dull ache in her chest and the bitter understanding that her boy had long since stopped being a boy. And the man he had become was someone she didn't like at all. The next day, closer to 7 in the evening, Gloria slowly packed a bag. Her hands trembled with humiliation, 43 years old and being kicked out of her own home. She packed a little food, a bottle of water, a sweater. And then, without even knowing why, she opened the wardrobe and pulled out the stack of letters from Alberto. The white envelopes she had hidden for years, never daring to open them. Why was she taking them? To read them at the station? Or simply because they were the only thing left that connected her to the past? To a time when she had still meant something to someone? Voices and laughter echoed from the hallway. Esteban's friends had already started to gather. Gloria picked up her bag and headed for the door. In the hallway, she ran into Carlos. "Oh, Senora Gloria," the young man said, surprised. "You're leaving?" "Yes," she replied shortly, avoiding his gaze. Carlos hesitated, studying her face. In his eyes, there was something her own son lacked: sympathy, concern, genuine interest. "That's a shame," he said, and there was real sadness in his voice. "You must be exhausted after working all day. And now you have to leave your own home too." Those simple words of understanding hurt more than any reproach. A stranger could see her exhaustion, her own son couldn't. A stranger pitied her, the one closest to her was throwing her out. "It's nothing," Gloria said quietly, feeling a lump rising in her throat. "It's fine. The important thing is that you all have a good time." "Senora, but maybe." "It's fine, Carlos. Thank you." Gloria quickly stepped out onto the landing, not giving him a chance to say anything more. The door slammed behind her. Carlos entered the room, his face thoughtful. Esteban was putting chips and other snacks on the table. "Hey, Esteban," Carlos said, "don't you think it's a bit cruel to treat your mom like that?" "Cruel? Why?" Esteban replied without turning around. "Why? You're kicking your mother out of her own house." Esteban shrugged. "It's just one evening. She won't die. But she's your mother, man. The only one you've got." "That's exactly why she'll understand," Esteban said dismissively. "Motherly love and all that. Relax, Carlos, she'll be fine. Help me set up the chairs instead. I'm serious." "And I'm serious too, drop it." Esteban snapped, turning sharply toward him. "I'm 22, I have the right to have some fun in my own home. Enough with the moralizing, you sound like some old grandpa." Carlos shook his head but didn't argue further. By 8 o'clock the apartment was full of young people. Juan and Miguel showed up, along with a few neighborhood girls, including Sofia, who Esteban liked. The music was blasting, beer was flowing, and more snacks appeared on the table. "Esteban, this is awesome!" Sofia shouted. "Thanks," Esteban replied, pleased, pouring beer into plastic cups. "Where's your mom?" one of the girls asked. "She went to a friend's," Esteban lied. Dancing, laughter, loud conversations, the apartment came alive. Esteban felt like the king of the evening. Finally, he could show his friends he knew how to throw a real party. Finally, he was being treated with respect. "Esteban, you did a great job organizing all this." Juan clapped him on the back. "We haven't had this much fun in ages." Everything was going perfectly until, around 9:30, there was a knock at the door. The knock was sharp and insistent. The guests heard it even over the loud music. Who could that be? Juan wondered. Maybe the neighbors came to complain about the noise? Sofia suggested. Esteban walked to the door and opened it. Standing on the threshold were two men in dark suits, one middle-aged with a folder of documents, the other younger with hard, sharp features. "Good evening," said the older man in a cold tone. "We're the new owners of this apartment." "What owners?" Esteban didn't understand. "This is my mom's and my house." "Not exactly." The man handed him some documents. The apartment was sold at auction for unpaid debts. Your mother hasn't made loan payments for several months. Someone turned down the music. The guests turned toward the door, following the conversation with growing interest. "You're joking," Esteban muttered, flipping through the documents. The letters swam before his eyes, but the bank seal looked official enough. "We're not joking, young man," said the second man, stepping inside and looking around the apartment. "We have full rights to inspect the property." "Wait!" Esteban shouted. "There must be some mistake. My mom. Your mother owes the bank a large sum of money, the first man interrupted dryly. The bank sold the debt to a collection agency, and they sold it to us. We are now the legal owners of this property. The guests began exchanging glances and quietly gathering their things. Sophia was the first to head for the door. Sophia, wait. Esteban called out to her. Sorry, she muttered, avoiding his eyes. I have to go home. You have 1 day to vacate the premises, the older man continued. Tomorrow evening, new tenants will be moving in. But where are we supposed to go? That's not our problem. I suggest you start packing quickly. Within 15 minutes, only Esteban and the 2 men in suits remained in the apartment. Leftovers were strewn across the table, empty bottles everywhere, the loud ticking of the clock. The party that was supposed to be his triumph had turned into a public humiliation. Don't drag it out, young man, the older man said as he headed for the door. We'll be back tomorrow at this time with the new tenants. The door closed. Esteban was left alone amid the wreckage. His friends had disappeared without even saying goodbye. Sophia had vanished the moment she heard about the family's financial troubles. Everything collapsed in an instant. He grabbed his jacket and ran out of the apartment, leaving his belongings behind. On the landing, he stopped, breathing heavily. What now? Where could he go? How could he face his mother? He remembered she was sitting alone at the station right now, and a wave of remorse hit him. He had to find her and apologize for what he had done. Esteban ran down the stairs and suddenly noticed something white sticking out of their mailbox. He pulled out the envelope and stared at it in shock. He immediately recognized his father's handwriting. The train station was crowded in the evening, some people arriving, some leaving, others just waiting. Gloria found an empty bench in the corner of the hall and sat down, clutching her bag tightly. Life swirled around her, children crying, lovers laughing, passengers hurrying by with their suitcases. And she sat alone, needed by no one. 43 years old. Half a life lived. And what did she have? A son who threw her out of the house for a party. A job where she was nobody. Debts she would never be able to repay. Gloria opened her bag and saw the stack of letters, the white envelopes with the familiar handwriting. How many years had she hidden them, unable to bring herself to open them? And now, sitting on the cold bench at the train station, she suddenly thought, what if I've been wrong all this time? What if it wasn't about another woman at all? Her hands trembled as she untied the ribbon. The first envelope, from 4 years ago. Gloria slowly tore it open and unfolded the sheet inside. Taking a deep breath, she began to read. My dearest Gloria, I know you must hate me, and you have every reason to. I hurt you in a way no woman on earth deserves. But I can't stay silent any longer. Don't think I left you for another woman. I've heard the rumors, the neighbors talked. There was never another woman. There was only you, my wife, my love, the meaning of my life. And that's exactly why I left. Gloria, I put you and Esteban in mortal danger. It's my fault, all of it. It started so innocently. I went to a casino with some colleagues after work, just to have a look. But the atmosphere there, the bright lights, the music, the people winning money so easily. I thought, why not try? Just a few coins, what could it hurt? I thought I was smart enough to win. I dreamed of buying you a beautiful dress, a new bike for Esteban, a better apartment for us. I wanted to be a hero for my family, to come home with a sack of money and see pride in your eyes. But luck never came. I lost again and again, and each time I thought, next time I'll win it all back. I borrowed from friends, then from strangers, and finally from people no one should ever owe. Gloria, it's a disease. A real addiction, like drugs. I couldn't stop, even knowing I was destroying our life. Every time I swore it would be the last time, but then I'd go back, like a zombie. When the debts became enormous, and those people started threatening you and Esteban. Remember when he came home from school in tears? It was so cruel what they did to him. That's when I realized I had ruined the most precious thing I had. And the only way to save you was to disappear forever. If I stayed, they could have hurt you or Esteban. I couldn't let that happen. Better for you to think I'm a traitor than to live in fear for your lives. Forgive me, my darling. Forgive me for not being the man you deserved. Forgive me for destroying our family with my weakness. Yours, Alberto. Gloria read, and the world around her shattered, only to rebuild itself anew. When she reached the last lines, the letter slipped from her trembling hands, and she grabbed the bench to keep from fainting. There had never been another woman. For almost 15 years, she had hated the husband who had sacrificed himself for their safety. For 15 years, she had thought of him as a traitor, a cheat, a coward. But he had only been a weak man who had realized his mistake too late. Gloria reread the letter. Tears blurred the lines, her heart pounded so violently it felt like it would burst from her chest. Then she opened the next envelope. The second letter was written a year later. My love, I'm writing to you again, even though I know you won't answer. Maybe you don't even read my letters. But I have to tell you how I'm living now. I work as a porter at the port and live in an old abandoned house. Every penny counts. I can't afford proper housing. Everything I earn I put toward paying off the debts. I eat once a day and buy only the bare essentials. The most important thing is to settle with those men so that you and Esteban are safe. How is our son? Is he doing well in school? Does he have friends? Tell him, no, don't tell him anything. He probably hates me. I love you both more than life itself. That's the one thing that hasn't changed. Alberto. My God, Gloria whispered, her voice breaking. The tears flowed in a torrent. She cried like she had never cried before, from pain, from shame, from overwhelming grief. Passers-by turned to look, but she didn't care. How could she have been so blind? How could she not have believed him? Details from those last days resurfaced in her memory. How Alberto had turned pale when he heard about the threats to Esteban. How he had walked through the apartment with a baseball bat, ready to protect his family. How he had looked at her before disappearing, with such pain and love in his eyes. And she had thought he had a young lover. Forgive me, she whispered into the empty air. Alberto, forgive me. She grabbed the rest of the letters and feverishly read them one after another. Her husband's words grew more desperate. With every line, the pain became more unbearable. Alberto had worked every day thinking about them. He had suffered when he learned about their son's accident. He had saved money to help them. Gloria clutched the letters to her chest and rocked back and forth on the bench like a wounded animal. Around her, life at the station went on, children crying, lovers laughing, passengers rushing with their luggage, but her world lay in ruins. Her husband's words from the letters echoed in her mind. I've changed, my love. I'm a different man now. I'll never go near a casino again. I work as a mechanic in a small auto repair shop. The owner is a good man. He knows my story but gave me a chance. I've managed to save a little. I could help you and Esteban. I know raising a teenager alone isn't easy. I know you need money for his education, for his future. Could I see him? I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But maybe you could let me explain everything in person. Maybe Esteban has the right to know the truth about his father. Our son is already 16. He's become a man, and I missed it all, his first love, his graduation, all the important moments of his life. Gloria, please, give me a chance to be a father. I know I don't deserve it, but Esteban needs a dad. I heard about Esteban's accident. I almost lost my mind from fear and worry. I wanted to rush to the hospital but was afraid my appearance would only make things worse. Gloria, give me a chance to atone. Give me a chance to be the husband and father I should have been from the start. These words spun endlessly through Gloria's mind. Why had she been so proud and stubborn? Why hadn't she read the letters? How many years had they lost because of her distrust? How much pain had she caused not only herself but Esteban, who had grown up believing his father had abandoned him? And now? Where could she even find Alberto? He hadn't written in a year. He must have given up, thinking she would never respond. She had deprived both herself and her son of a real family. "Mom," she suddenly heard. "Mom?" The voice was quiet, hesitant. Gloria lifted her head and saw Esteban. He stood in front of her with red-rimmed eyes, disheveled hair, and a wrinkled jacket. He looked lost and scared, like a little boy. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, wiping away her tears. "Mom, everything's fallen apart," Esteban's voice trembled. "Some men came, with documents. They said they bought our apartment because of the debts. All the friends ran away without even saying goodbye. Sophia, she looked at me like I was some kind of leper and left." He sank down onto the bench beside his mother. "Where are we going to go now, Mom? We don't have a home anymore." Gloria looked at her son, her boy who had so cruelly thrown her out just an hour ago and now sat beside her, broken and helpless. Conflicting emotions warred inside her. The sting of his cruel words still burned in her heart. "I don't care where you go. Just don't be here." But seeing him now, lost, humiliated, abandoned by his friends, hurt even more. "My boy," she thought, looking at his trembling hands, at the tears he was trying to hide. "My foolish, selfish, but still my boy." A mother's heart doesn't know how to hold a grudge for long. It only knows how to love and forgive, even when it hurts. "Come here," Gloria said softly, opening her arms. Esteban didn't resist. He leaned against his mother, just like he had as a child when he was scared or hurt. Gloria hugged him tightly, feeling the tension leave his body. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered into her shoulder. "I was a jerk. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Hush," she said, gently stroking his hair. "Hush, my son. We've all made mistakes. Every one of us." She held her only child close, understanding that no matter what he did, no matter how he hurt her, he would always be her son. Her blood. Her heart. "Mom, there's something else." Esteban pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and turned it over uncertainly in his hands. "I found this in the mailbox when I was leaving. It's a letter. From Dad." Gloria's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The familiar handwriting, the familiar words of love and repentance. He was still in town. And he still loved them. At the end of the letter was a phone number. Alberto was asking her to call if she could find it in her heart to forgive him. "Mom? What does it say?" Esteban asked quietly, searching her face, trying to read her emotions. Gloria lifted her head from the letter. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at her son with such pain that his heart twisted. "Son, I have to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "Tonight, I found out, your father never abandoned you." Esteban blinked in surprise. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" Gloria closed her eyes, gathering her courage. "All these years, he wrote me letters. But I was foolish, so proud. I never read them. I hid them from you. I thought he was lying, making excuses. I didn't believe him." "What?" Esteban couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You hid Dad's letters from me?" "I'm sorry," Gloria whispered, unable to meet his gaze. "I'm so sorry, son. I robbed you of the chance to know the truth. I robbed you of a father because of my pride." "Mom, what was in those letters?" Esteban's voice grew harsher. "I need to know. Tell me." Gloria silently handed him the stack of envelopes. Her hands were shaking. "Read them," she said quietly. "Read everything. And understand what a terrible mistake I made." Pale, Esteban took the first letter and began to read. With each line, his expression changed, from confusion to shock, from shock to anger, from anger to understanding. "My God," he whispered. Mom, it says here he was protecting us. That those men threatened me, an 8-year-old boy. Gloria nodded without lifting her head. I ruined everything, Esteban. Everything. All these years you thought your father had abandoned you. But he was working to pay off the debts. Fighting to overcome his addiction. Thinking about us every single day. Forgive me, son. For so many years, I didn't let your father explain himself. It's all my fault. Mother and son sat together on the station bench, clutching the letters, crying over a past that could never be reclaimed. Every morning, Esteban had woken up believing his father had abandoned him. Every night, Gloria had gone to sleep hating the man who had once been her love. Every birthday, every new year, every important moment, all had passed without him, leaving only pain and resentment. How could this happen to us? Esteban whispered. It was our lesson, Gloria replied, sobbing. All this time they had clung together like two shipwrecks washed ashore by life, having lost everything except each other. But now, in the depths of their wounded hearts, something warm stirred. Tentative, barely noticeable, like the first ray of sun after a long, dark night. It was hope. Mom, Esteban said quietly, what if it's not too late? Gloria lifted her eyes to him. He's alive. He's somewhere nearby. And another letter just arrived today. Gloria silently handed Esteban the last letter from his father. Yes, Alberto still loves us, she whispered. Her heart started pounding faster. Could it really be? Could they really have a second chance after so many years of pain? But what if he won't forgive us? She thought. Mom, Esteban said, his voice trembling as he finished reading, let's call Dad. He's still hoping to meet us. Son, I'm so ashamed. And it's the middle of the night. Mom, what are you talking about? That doesn't matter. Of course we'll call him now. He's been waiting for so long. Esteban quickly pulled out his phone and dialed the number from the letter. After a few rings, a man's voice answered. Hello? Dad? Esteban's voice cracked with emotion. It's Esteban. Your son. There was a long pause, and then Esteban heard soft sobs on the other end. Esteban, my dear? Is it really you? Yes, Dad. Mom and we read your letters. I'm sorry it took us so long. But we understand now. God, where are you? I'll come right away. Dad, we're at the Central train station. We're not doing well. We've lost our home, we have no money, no hope. Son, I'm on my way. Don't go anywhere, I'll be there in half an hour. Gloria took the phone from Esteban. Alberto, her voice shook. Gloria, my dear. You forgiven me? Forgiven you, she sobbed. It's you who should forgive me. For listening to other people instead of trusting you. For not reading your letters. For robbing Esteban of his father. My darling, please don't cry. Just wait for me. Hold on, I'll be there soon. And everything will be okay. Alberto Martin had changed a lot over the years. Work clothes, cheap shoes, gray in his hair. But his eyes were the same, kind, loving, full of hope. He spotted them from afar with Gloria and Esteban sitting on a bench in the waiting hall. His heart pounded so hard he had to stop, afraid it might burst from his chest. Gloria was still beautiful, the beauty of a woman who had weathered many storms. And Esteban. My God, how he had changed. A tall, grown man now stood where once there had been an 8-year-old boy. Alberto walked toward them slowly. For a few moments, all three of them stood in silence, not knowing what to say. Gloria, Alberto finally spoke quietly, is this really not a dream? I missed you so much, she said, surprising even herself. Alberto offered her a bouquet, simple chrysanthemums from a street vendor, the best he could find at this hour. Forgive me. For everything. For the pain I caused. For the years we lost. And you, forgive me, my love. Gloria replied warmly, taking the flowers. I didn't read your letters. I forbade myself to trust you. Esteban looked at his father, studying the face he barely remembered, like a blurred photograph. Dad, do you remember me when I was little? Every day, son, I thought about you. Alberto's voice trembled. I remembered teaching you how to ride a bike in the courtyard. How you'd fall asleep on my lap when I read you bedtime stories. How you begged me to tell the story about the dragon who became good. Those memories gave meaning to my life. Esteban couldn't hold back his tears. I thought you didn't love me. That I didn't matter to you. That you chose another family over us. You matter to me more than air, Alberto said, pulling his son into an embrace. I didn't leave you, I left for you. I know now, Esteban sobbed. Forgive me for hating you. Forgive me for blaming Mom. You had every right to hate me. I destroyed our family with my weakness and foolishness. But now it's going to be different, right? Esteban asked hopefully. Alberto looked at Gloria. That doesn't depend on me alone, son. Gloria rose from the bench and walked over to her husband. Alberto, I understand now why you did what you did. You had no choice. You protected us the only way you could. We're all just human, and we all have the right to make mistakes. Gloria, those words, there's so much wisdom in them. Thank you. Alberto said, deeply moved. I'll do everything I can to make you happy. I'll earn money you'll never want for anything again. I don't need money, Gloria said softly. I need you. Just you. Alberto couldn't believe his ears. What did you say? You've always been my life. I never loved anyone else. There's only you in my heart. Alberto smiled and hugged his wife. I've only loved you too, all these years. If you're ready to start over, I am too, my love. Esteban watched his parents, hardly believing what he was seeing. So, we'll be a family again? A real family? Is that what you want, son? Alberto asked. Of course I want it. I've dreamed about it my whole life. Alberto embraced his wife and son together. After so many years of separation, pain, and loneliness, they were together again, and it felt like a true miracle. But from now on, everything will be honest, Alberto said. No more secrets, no more lies. We'll tell each other everything, even if the truth is unpleasant or painful. Agreed, Gloria nodded. Me too. And I'm going to work, Esteban said unexpectedly. Dad, can you get me a job as an apprentice at the auto shop? Of course, son. But are you sure that's what you want? Maybe you should study, get a serious profession. No, Dad. I'll work and help Mom. I've already caused her too much pain. It's time to stop being a childish kid. I'm 22, it's time to become a man. I want you both to be proud of me. I already am, Alberto said. You recognized your mistakes, and that's what matters. You found the strength to change, and that's not just words. That's the decision of a grown man. They sat together on the train station bench, holding each other close, planning their future. They sat there, in the middle of the bustling waiting hall, lost in their own world, a world of hope and new beginnings. I have an apartment, Alberto said, stroking his wife's hair. Small, but clean. It'll be enough for now. Tomorrow, we'll go get your things and bring them home. Gloria held her husband's hand tightly and believed that a new life was finally beginning for them. Later we'll find a bigger place, Alberto continued confidently, his voice full of hope. Maybe a small house outside the city. With a garden where you can plant roses. You always dreamed about roses, didn't you, my love? Gloria lifted her head in surprise. Yes, and I still dream about it. You remember? I remember everything, darling. How you used to stop in front of flower shops, staring at the rose bushes. How you said that one day we'd have a garden, and you'd plant the most beautiful roses in the world. Tears filled her eyes again, but now they were tears of happiness. And you'll find a job you truly love, Alberto said firmly. Something where they'll value you. No more breaking your back. Dad, Esteban suddenly asked, our apartment was taken for debts. Can we get it back? Alberto frowned, thinking. Well, son, theoretically, yes. If we pay off the debt immediately. Gloria, how much was the debt? She named the amount. I have some savings, Alberto nodded. I saved every penny. At first to pay off old debts, and then, well, I just kept saving, hoping maybe someday I could come back to you and buy a house. Though I wasn't sure if you would ever forgive me. Of course, I haven't saved enough for a house yet, but I can pay off your debt, Gloria. So we'll be able to get the apartment back, Esteban said confidently, and later we can sell it and buy a little house with a garden, somewhere outside the city. That's a good idea. Alberto smiled, and Gloria couldn't utter a word. She still couldn't believe it wasn't all just a dream. 3 years later. A small house with blue shutters stood on a quiet street, surrounded by greenery and flowers. White walls, a red-tiled roof, a wooden porch with wicker chairs. It wasn't big, but it held more happiness than a mansion ever could. Gloria stood in the garden, carefully cutting morning roses for a bouquet. Her hands, once rough from hard labor, were now soft and cared for, the hands of a woman who spent her time doing what she loved. Pink, white, red, yellow, the flowers grew in lush bushes along the garden paths, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. Mom, your bouquets are beautiful today. Esteban called, stepping out of the house with a thermos of coffee. The white ones are especially lovely, Gloria smiled, pointing to a bush covered in large blooms. Senora Patricia ordered white ones yesterday for her niece's wedding. Yes, Patricia Herrera, her former employer, had become one of her first and most loyal customers. Now Gloria's bouquets decorated the most elegant homes in the city, and she could proudly say, I'm the owner of my own business. Has Dad come down yet? She asked her son. Yes, he's reading the newspaper and drinking orange juice, Esteban laughed. He's heading to work soon. There are a lot of orders at the auto shop today. Alberto had been running his own workshop on the edge of town for 2 years now, and Esteban had become his best assistant. The boy turned out to be a capable apprentice, hands as skillful as his father's, and more importantly, with age came patience and responsibility. When are you going to visit Carolina? Gloria asked slyly. Esteban's face flushed red. Carolina, they had met by chance. She worked as a salesgirl in an auto parts store. Modest, quiet, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The complete opposite of Sophia, who had abandoned him at the first sign of trouble. Mom, don't embarrass me, Esteban mumbled, but his eyes shone with happiness. I'll bring her here. I want to show her our garden and introduce her properly to you and Dad. Well, when's the wedding? Gloria pressed playfully. Mom. Esteban protested, but then added more softly, probably this fall. If she says yes. Gloria set the roses down on the porch and hugged her son around the shoulders. Her boy had become a man, responsible, hardworking, caring. He worked alongside his father, helped his mother in the garden, and was saving money to start his own family. Most importantly, he had learned to love truly, without expecting anything in return. Dad. Esteban called out. It's time to go. Alberto stepped out of the house, tanned, a little grayer, but happy. He hugged his wife and kissed her tenderly. Gloria looked at her husband and couldn't stop smiling. He had changed after all these years, was calmer, wiser. He worked from morning till night, but never forgot about his family. Every evening they sat together on the porch, drinking cocoa and talking. I love you more now than I did 15 years ago, Alberto said. And I love you too, Gloria replied. That evening, the four of them sat on the porch. Alberto read a book, Esteban and Carolina played chess, and Gloria was knitting small socks. Mom, who are those socks for? Esteban asked, surprised. I think we'll need them soon, Gloria said with a mysterious smile, winking at Carolina, who blushed deeply and hid her face in her hands. As the sun quietly set behind the hills, Gloria set aside her knitting. The roses in the garden were in full bloom, and peace and love reigned in the family. Listen to these beautiful words I found in this book. Alberto suddenly exclaimed and began to read aloud. Everyone makes mistakes. Some choose the wrong path, some say the wrong words, some trust the wrong person with their heart. It causes pain, shatters dreams, wounds souls. But every mistake is a lesson. Every fall is a chance to rise again. The important thing is not to give up, and to believe in love. Because love conquers all, pride and resentment, time and distance. Love always finds its way home. In the golden light of the setting sun, the Martin family's house with its blue shutters stood among the roses, a living proof of that simple truth. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and comment.